Virginia. It's a little bit of good news. We're doing better than many parts of the country that are having a spike. If you look at the data, the overall cases in the state are dropping, but we're having a bit of a spike apparently down at Hampton Roads. The other interesting thing about Virginia, which has really been, depending on how you view it, if not through a political lens, has been a real leader, I think, in the country and trying to address the pandemic as it's come along. But we have now been the first state to issue emergency regulations for workplace reentry, safety protocols. So Tamara's going to speak about that a little bit later, but that was big news a couple of weeks ago in the state. So that's where we are. We're going to give you some good information, and people are going to talk about where their particular market segments are. So introducing the panel, welcome back Ginny Johnston. She's a workplace strategist at Capital One. She's part of the Workplace Solutions Group. She's really a leader in research and implementation of next generation workspace. We've got Tamara Van Meter, my partner here at SMBW. She's principal and lead of the interior design practice. She's an industry leader in helping clients use their real estate to build their brand and culture. So she is a leader for us in that. Chris Durand is a market leader for DPR. They are a national construction firm, and he's really been instrumental in this region in building some of the largest projects. I'm sure you know a lot of them. I will just call out Facebook as one that everyone will know. Kim Smith with Knoll. She's a senior director of workplace strategy. She brings a wealth of experience with Knoll, but also in her previous time in the A&D community to help clients vision and execute their workplace goals. And last, we have Drew, who's new to us this time, filling in for Lee, who couldn't join us. Drew Roberts leads the mechanical design team for CMTA, which is a nationally recognized firm with a focus on performance-based design, MEP design. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists. I think we're going to start with Ginny. And why don't you give us an update and tell us where we are?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you inviting me back. We've been working really hard at Capital One, moving forward with just planning and making sure that the workplace is safe. From the very beginning, we've prioritized health and safety for all of our associates. And, you know, our associate base is reflective of America. So everyone is at a different level in comfort with the virus and for the health and safety of themselves and their loved ones. So we're taking that return as a scientific evidence-based approach. Our CEO announced, if you'll remember, last time that we would not return before Labor Day, but he's since come back and said that a vast majority will continue to work from home through the end of the year. Our data transformation has really allowed us to support 95% of our associates at home, and our business functionality is solvent. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. With not a lot of data that aligns, there's a big focus in our localities on schools, and they're working through their planning. Many in our area are going to go back virtually. So I know that I'm dealing right now with that and two small school-age kids at home. The virus spread is also uncertain across the country, and jurisdictions are working to make hard decisions about closing or moving back a phase, and that's affecting us at different levels. So for the short term, we will not be bringing back our full workforce. We are considering a small percentage in September after Labor Day, and we'll only be opening up a small portion of our buildings to those who feel comfortable, who feel like they need to come back. We will be employing significant safety measures that include health screening, physical distancing, the use of masks, enhanced cleaning. So all of those things that we're all considering. And And then as we enter into 2021, if the COVID risk trends move in the right direction, then we'll start to formally implement our phased approach that's continuing to develop. But as we discussed, it will be a slow and steady phased return. And we really see it as an overlap of three key elements, one being the COVID trajectory, one being building readiness. So what are those tactical office infrastructure needs that are informed by CDC guidelines to make the office safe for associates to come back? And the third is that associate readiness. How do we prepare associates to come back, to return? How do we make sure that they feel safe and informed, and do they feel safe to come back to the office? And these three things combine into what we're calling our opportunity zone. Defining associate need, however, is complex. So we sent out a survey to a portion of our associates to really understand what the tone is. How does everybody feel, and how can we use that information to make directional decisions and validate our assumptions as we're thinking about the office? We heard resoundingly that people need more time. Right now, most of our associates told us they don't feel safe returning until there's a vaccine. So whether it was the current spread, or whether there's the vaccine, or whether they're caring for themselves because they're high risk, or loved ones because they're high risk. So that really set our tone for deciding our percentages for September and moving in at such a small percentage.
So real quick, you're an international company, but you have offices all over the country. Is this at least for the US, is this a one size fits all strategy, or does it change depending on office location?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We set our safety measures up as an enterprise strategy. However, opening to certain percentages is based on the COVID risk in that region or that locality, as well as building risks. There are inherent building risks that are associated with just architectural features of the building. What does the flow look like? How do people traverse up and down? Is it a building that requires mass transit, which is noted as higher risk? So it will definitely be determined on a regional basis.
Interesting. Well, Tamara, throwing this to you, we have some national clients, you have some national clients, but a lot of our work is more regional, local. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing with your clients.
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody. Glad to be back with you guys again. I thought I could do two things. First, just give a quick snapshot of where are we. It was about 2 months ago when we chatted. And so I think in some ways the needle has moved very little. And then other ways we're starting to see progress and change. And then I'll talk about what's coming, what we're seeing on the horizon in terms of how work is changing. And then the big news, of course, is the ETS guidelines that were just announced. So I'll go over those. For us, SMBW, we're a 20-person design firm. We did reopen, a soft reopen June 17th, and that was in accordance with phase 2. However, we have done from that day, it has been shift schedules and voluntary. And so what we've seen is it's a roughly 20 to 25% participation. Some staff is coming in and we're hearing the, better resources. My Wi-Fi at home is shaky. I can concentrate here. So they're using the office as a place for focus. And so we want to be able to allow that resource, but we have very strict guidelines that people are following with social distancing and how we've structured the office, new sanitization. So there are certainly changes in how you have to engage in the office when you're here for safety. But with that, I think we're planning to continue in that pattern for a while. As Ginny said, there's just not enough certainty right now for us to move forward or make any other significant changes. Parents are struggling. I think every day school systems are announcing their plans, and we're also seeing a lot of conflicting data. So it makes it hard for us to really make some concrete decisions. I will say employers have had about a quarter of business activity and data to reflect back on how is remote working actually doing, how's it impacting business. And a lot of our clients are telling us that actually we're doing okay. And so I think the confidence that people have found a way to manage or redistribute their work stream is giving people a little bit of breathing room, so they're not feeling the rush to reopen. So more and more companies that we're talking to, Ginny said it already, are really deferring their reopening to later in this year or even next year. We are starting to see an uptick for those clients who are on the verge of lease negotiations or were considering a move or a construction project. Their thinking has changed for sure. They're challenging how much square footage they need. They're relying more on employees continuing to telework, and we're seeing clients start sublease conversations, trying to think of how to repurpose some existing square footage. So that's certainly in the works. So what we're seeing in terms of new changes, some software and technology and product launching around how to create more safety in the workplace. I'm sure Kimberly will talk a bit more about this. We're seeing a lot of tenants push on their landlords or building to do safety improvements to their HVAC systems, their filters primarily. I'm sure Drew will share more about that. One interesting thing we've seen recently is room sensor technology, which is not new. It's been around for many years, helping workplace planners track room occupancy. Now that same software is being utilized to track things from temperature, individuals' temperatures in the room. You can set controls to monitor with social distancing what your new limited capacity should be. So it alerts the employer if you're nearing or at capacity, and even traffic patterns. So it's all about creating, I think people are they're craving data, they're craving information around how their workplaces are being used so they can more safely create policies and procedures for their teams. And then the last thing I'll touch on is the Virginia Department of Labor and Industry earlier this month published the Emergency Temporary Standards. And so these are the first guidelines in the country. And in the absence of federal guidelines, Virginia created state guidelines that all employers will have to comply with. They have gone into effect this week. If you've not read them, we'll have a link after this so you can share, because you'll want to first see which category your company falls in. There are risk categories based on the exposure likelihood and the tasks that are being performed. And so they range from very high risk to very low risk. High risk being primarily healthcare and mortuary services. Most of our corporate clients are going to fall in that lowest risk category. But regardless, there are mandatory requirements that everyone will have to comply with. I will say, after reading them, there were no real shockers. Most of our corporate clients have already taken a very responsible approach to this and are already implementing the measures that were requested. So, but still definitely get a copy of that, review that with not only your HR advisor, but you'll also want to work with that with your legal counsel to make sure that you're compliant and that there are no questions going forward. But that is going to be something that is rolling out. It does also include some protection for employees. So there's some interesting language in there that gives some employees some comfort that there's now a benchmark that everyone will have to comply with going forward. So that's what we're seeing.
Thank you. All right, Drew, welcome to the panel. You're new this time, so good to have you. Last time in the Q&A with Lee, there's obviously a lot of interest in y'all's world in MEP, specifically mechanical changes, implementation strategies to mitigate and try to create a safer workplace. So I know you guys run offices around the country as well, so you have a workplace strategy that y'all have to deal with as an office, and then you're also helping clients create new MEP strategies. So give us an update of where you are.
Right. So thank you for having me, everybody. I guess from that perspective, this, unfortunately, and I guess maybe fortunately, this pandemic has sort of forced us to look more broadly to the trends we're going to in the industry as far as occupant wealth and wellness and health inside of these spaces. So in the context of this current pandemic and getting people back to work, the big thing there is filtration, dilution, or removal of these possibly contaminated air. So in the beginning of this, we had a lot of clients that were healthcare focused clients coming to us with more robust infrastructure, trying to help them understand, okay, we have these types of systems. Can we push all the air out of the building, make all these spaces negative? But for the average office worker, what can we do here? And there's obviously the means to put improved filtration, whether it's some systems might be able to support a HEPA filtration system, which are expensive per filters, but can catch those really small particles that we know that this virus is kind of limited to right now, the particle size. So can the system handle that? Can it handle the extra pressure drop? Can it actually even physically handle those filters? That's a question for some of these existing buildings. But more importantly, we've seen kind of new technologies, or maybe technologies that have been kind of on the fringe sort of pulled in, whether it's upper room UV, which kind of deals with the air that's getting circulated around the space, so that we're trying to kill all those particles up on the top of the space before they get circulated back down into the breathing zones. And that's something that can be added, that you might have seen them before sometimes in emergency department waiting rooms or other entry spaces to certain commercial spaces. You'll see them, they look like little boxes that have little blue glow coming off the top, and it's trying to shoot a UV straight across to try to get that entrained air up there and sort of kill any of the nasties that live up there. As well as that goes, as far as existing infrastructure, there's some promise that's been shown through research, and this is sort of new for them as well, but bipolar ionization, which is pretty low cost, pretty low impact, that can either go in the main air handling units that serve an entire commercial building, or if you had floors, you can put them inside of the ductwork with relative low impact and cost on operation. So we're seeing a lot of move towards this type of systems that can knock the things out of the air and then have the extra filtration that can then gather these up. And one thing we probably will see and have seen with some of our clients who have used bipolar ionization on other projects even previously to this pandemic is they're saying, man, I have to change my filters a lot more. It's because it's actually knocking these things out of the air so that the filters can do a better job of what they're supposed to do. So we're seeing a lot of focus and emphasis being put on those two strategies as well. And those lead to broader conversations from this pandemic into office wellness and occupant wellness in general, kind of seeing the trends and studies with cognitive effects of CO2. So how can we improve that in the workspace so people are more focused when they're there, getting more efficiency out of their time? And that's the increased ventilation piece there. So if we can increase the ventilation into these spaces, we can make a more efficient mental place for people to work and conduct their business. I think as far in the context of existing buildings, you might be limited. And we had talked, like I said, I mentioned the upper room UV, which is something that can be installed in existing buildings. The bipolar ionization can be installed in existing buildings and is relatively low impact. The UV, as far as in context of the COVID, it is probably not feasible because the array of UV lights you'd need to kill this on a first pass is pretty expensive and extensive. It'd be very large and expensive to replace and maintain. So that's what we're seeing sort of in the context and conversations of the existing people getting back to work. And there are other options as well that we've seen. And we had one client talking about how during the very beginning when things were unsure, they were rolling around portable HEPA filtrations, little boxes that could then just in the circulation spaces. So if you had them between a pod of 4 cubicles, you could separate these things out just to give people, to let them know you're taking it's in their breathing zone in their area, which is where we're finding the most impact, is that this thing wants to sit in the air around you and can stay aerosolized for 20 minutes, as I believe what the most recent thing is saying. So at first we thought maybe it's surfaces. Do we need to focus more on surfaces of, whether it's duct surfaces or air surfaces that things are crossing? But we've kind of, the recent research has sort of said, yes, what it is maintained proximity to somebody who has put this into the air, and that air is then, being re-entrained by you. You're touching your face, you're touching your eyes, or it's getting back to your body. So trying to deal with that in the space, and that's where the upper room UV, or there's the small HEPA filtration little boxes that you can sit around people's desks or in conference rooms. That's kind of what we're seeing and kind of advising a lot of our clients to do in this meantime to get people back and feeling comfortable to go back into the office.
Drew, I'm curious, are you seeing, as you're being approached by clients for counsel, are you seeing clients actually pull the trigger on some of the, I guess, more robust modifications, or are they still in this pause mode to watch what happens before they're really proceeding with renovation to their HVAC systems?
I would say it depends. We've seen a little bit of both. There's still some, because even now, like, there's still some things that are unknown. Like, we know a lot more than we did 3 months ago, but still in terms of this pandemic and people getting robust research done around it, there's still some questions. So we're seeing some people on the low impact, low cost, like the bipolar ionization, which we know has been proven. It kind of adds an extra ion to the thing, kind of knocks it out, and can make some of these things inert. And then our filtration system can grab those. That's pretty easy. It's a little black bar that's 3 feet long that they can insert in a duct, and it takes 120 volt power. So we're seeing people more drive towards those. We had been pushing those in a lot of our buildings anyways to help initially on our energy solution side to reduce ventilation, because you can use that as a reduced ventilation. Now, if we combine that with a strategy of, hey, we want increased ventilation, we went 30% over our normal, as ASHRAE states should be for higher quality environments like the IEQ, we went 30% over or more, so we can get more fresh air into the space. We're turning over this air, getting out there, exhausting it all outside. So if we use that bipolar ionization to knock things out of the air along with increased or maintained ventilation, we are seeing people go towards that. Now the UV, as I said, is a little more expensive, and it's something that was kind of more popular years ago in other types of facilities. So healthcare, for instance, we're seeing people trying to talk more about that just from an overall air cleanliness perspective. As I mentioned, to get this on a single pass UV kill, it would take a lot of UV lights. It'd be big infrastructure, be expensive. You'd be spending thousands of dollars a year on replacement bulbs or every 2 years. So I think the concept there is to get the wellness incorporated there. Is the UV does a really good job of keeping coils and surfaces inside your air handling units clean, kind of what they're usually intended for there. So we're seeing people go back towards that, and we're really pushing that advice of saying, hey, let's just kind of knock down anything we can on this, keep the coil clean so other things can't grow on there, any mold, spores, bacteria. And those are conversations that we've had. Now, there are some even more expensive side stream scrubber applications that we have seen and talked about and implemented for scrubbing the ventilation air, return air to these systems, but those are very expensive. And those are kind of those, hey, if this is something that's going to be serious for a long time, these are conversations we have over here. We have a solution. It's high impact to the building and also to the budget and operationally. So it's sort of like waiting in the wings. If this thing is something that we have to deal with seriously all the time, it'd become more standard to that point.
All right, thanks. Chris, it's actually a kind of a good segue to you. I mean, you guys are in the middle of developing buildings. I guess one question to start you off might be, are you seeing clients do any turnarounds on their HVAC design on buildings that are in progress as a reflection of the COVID pandemic?
We're seeing the evaluation and some of the implementation of the technology that Drew just brought up. But I think to Ginny's point of a lot of folks still working from home, a lot of the employers are still really evaluating kind of going forward what they're going to do from a air quality standpoint.
Okay. Well, beyond that, we talked with you a little bit last time about, maintaining the workforce on sites. supply chains, things like that. So why don't you give us an update of the construction work?
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for inviting us back, and really good to see everybody from round one. And for the folks just joining us in this series, wanted to just reiterate, DPR is a top 10 general contractor. We've got 30 offices in 16 states with 6,500 employees. 3,000 of those are craft workers. So we do about 95% of our work in 5 core markets: healthcare, commercial, higher ed, life sciences, and advanced technology. And as I said back in May, because of this broad range and spectrum of markets and geographies, and with a large part of our business based on the West Coast and the growing presence we have in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, we were really on the front lines in California and New York, and then cities like Seattle and Boston when they took the precautions they did early on. But now, as some of the other panelists have mentioned, we're seeing a resurgence in California. We're seeing new surges in Texas, Florida, and Arizona. So our offices in those states have been able to adopt a lot of the best practices that we had already established while still understanding and complying with their own state and local guidelines. So DPR, like many of our peers in the construction industry, are hired to manage our clients' risk. We manage all types of risk on projects and every project, but when it comes to the safety and health of our people on our projects in our offices, that's really unequivocally our highest priority, and we can't weigh relative risks. It's either appropriate and safe enough to work within our standards, or it's not. So to that point, I want to talk a little bit more about an innovation that we have deployed on construction projects to help us manage and mitigate any risk of COVID exposure, and also talk a little bit about how we're helping our customers manage the financial risks many are facing, providing them with a little cost certainty that they may need to make those capital outlay decisions during these turbulent times. So like I did on the last webinar, I'm really going to concentrate specifically on what we're doing at the Facebook project in Eastern Henrico. So before COVID broke, I had mentioned we had close to 1,000 people on site at Facebook, but Facebook made the decision to shut down all their construction projects worldwide for an indefinite period of time until they had a plan to address the situation. And I talked about some of the measures that we took immediately to start ramping back up as it pertained to testing and communication protocols and site logistics. So early in the COVID breakout, our innovation and technology team at DPR started the evaluation of wearable technology so that in the event a worker becomes infected with COVID-19, the wearable technology will allow us to understand the locations where the worker might have been throughout the shift and who the worker may have had close contact with while on site. Wearables are discreet enough for the worker in the field not to feel like they're being monitored, but allow us to provide the protection necessary to keep folks safe. And one of the determining factors on the technology we ended up selecting was the capability to have social distancing parameters set up and alert management and workers if too many people occupy a confined space. So a lot of, to what Tamara was talking about with the in-room sensors, this is now wearable technology. These alerts can be followed up with progressive coaching techniques, further enhancing the positive culture on the project and intended outcome. So wearable technology is proving to be beneficial, but does require a robust program that addresses a variety of elements, from complying with state and local personal privacy laws to ensuring the wearable technology does not encumber the worker from doing their job safely and effectively, to understanding the requirements of our individual customers. So understanding the individual customer requirements. After safety, it's usually quality, schedule, and costs that are really important to our customers. And during these times, there's a lot of uncertainty on the near and long-term effects this pandemic will have on the availability of labor and the price of equipment and material. So with the few minutes I have left, I just want to talk a little bit about some measures that we encourage our customers to take as they're navigating the uncertain waters we are currently in. First, reality capture methods like laser scanning of existing conditions involve time, labor, and some equipment costs, but by setting the basis for the larger digital model, helping support pre-construction activities ranging from procurement to how the work will be phased, has its larger benefits. While many project teams see the utility of doing this before a project begins, it's often left until the end, and it's almost too late to adjust for discrepancies. When you crunch the numbers, the cost of upfront labor related to the scan is far cheaper than rework, change orders, and lost productivity in the field. It can also prevent surprise costs and increase ROI through better overall productivity, quality control, and by reducing waste. Secondly, bringing MEP professionals into teams in the early stages reduces project teams' reliance on assumptions when making decisions that affect construction through facility operation. Assumptions made about these systems during design and buyout can lead to costly rework during construction. Often project teams do not bring MEP professionals really until the commissioning phase, when addressing issues hampering a system's performance adds cost and time, and it really could have been avoided with a little bit more oversight and planning from the beginning. Finally, one of the most effective tools for a cost control strategy is target value design. The value can be initial cost, total cost of ownership, and user experience, which then informs design decisions, means and methods, project sequencing, and cost priorities, with accountability to all parties to maximize value in a quantifiable way. So target value design presents unique challenges over the course of a long project planning effort, including ambiguity about timing of decisions and a tendency to revisit previous decisions when the value is not clear and quantifiable. It shifts the cost to the front end, but the true value comes from implementing the strategies and processes and bringing solutions to issues as they arise so that they never materialize in the field. So hopefully this was a little helpful, and Spencer, I'll take it back to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was helpful. Kim, I'm curious, listening to Chris talk about maybe moving the engagement of different partners on a project up in a timeline or back in a timeline based on where we are. Have you seen any of that? Are you engaged earlier or differently now in the COVID because you're really foundational to help people organize themselves in an office?
Absolutely. So thank you, Spencer. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be back again. As Spencer mentioned, I work for Knoll. We're a constellation of design-driven brands and people coming together to create inspired interiors. So there's my moment of commercial. And yes, we have been interacting very differently with our customers because our business is often very face-to-face showroom tours, observation studies in workplaces. So obviously, since our customers aren't in place at their workplaces for the most part, we're not there with them. But we've framed our conversations in terms of phases. So since we met last time, 2 months ago, we said we're in a surviving mode, an arriving mode, and then a thriving mode. So we're really sort of seeing a sense of like where people are. And it really helps to frame our conversations in saying, you know, in the surviving mode, we understand that companies are really, as Ginny mentioned with Cap One, are really working from home longer. So what does that look like and feel like for the near term and longer term? I think at the end of June, people had a moment of fatigue because many companies in March and April, when the pandemic was fresh and new, said, okay, by June, end of June, we're going to move people back in a phased reentry approach, and that never came to be. So now we're, you know, looking at August 1st this weekend. So I feel like that's really changed people's mentality and how they're doing that. So the adaptations of your home is really becoming a big thing, with a lot of companies offering stipends or an opportunity for people to buy ergonomic supportive furniture in their home offices. So that's a shift since we last talked. So Knoll's done a couple of things there from an e-commerce perspective. Luckily, before the pandemic, we purchased an e-commerce retailer called Fully. So we did a ton of business early on with a company, a brand called Fully that we acquired. And most recently in July, we opened a Knoll.com site where you can actually access and get Knoll products ordered directly through our Knoll.com site. So that's been a change in what we're doing. Also, companies are really trying to let people understand that this is going to be a little bit longer. Try to take vacation, or at least vacation days. Some companies are doing Zoom-free Fridays. So I'm glad we're here together on a Thursday. I may have had to decline. So that's sort of an interesting moment for all of us. We have continued to do peer-to-peer roundtables. So since April, we've been gathering together facilities managers, architects, designers on peer-to-peer roundtables and asking questions at the request of our customers. And we've learned a lot. We populated a considerations on returning to a healthy workplace, which I discussed the last time. But we also have said, we're curious about what people miss about their workplaces to try to get a little bit of that understanding. And what resoundingly the answer was people. People miss people in a three-dimensional environment instead of a two-dimensional environment. They actually said they also miss their collaborative workspaces. So people are really thinking about the arrival phase and then the thriving phase of what that's going to look and feel like. And, really asking themselves the big question, what is the purpose of the workplace? What is the purpose? Why am I going to go if I'm getting my work done here at home? And mainly it's about culture, community, connecting with your coworkers, restoring bonds that you may have lost over the period of time that we've been here. And we know the phased reentry is happening, so that continues. Many people are making modifications and giving visual cues for people that things have been changed, like we talked about the last time. One thing that's really coming up that we're focused on as of recent is dealing with the acoustics in the workplace and the quiet that's going to be, the unexpected quiet when you're going in at limited capacity back into your workplace. So we're connected with Cerami Associates that's headquartered in New York. I call them the acoustic magic makers. We did a coffee talk yesterday with them, and they're going to be the guests on our K-Talk series to really understand extremely quiet or incredibly loud, trying to solve for the sound of the user experience in this changing workplace. So that's something we're focusing with our customers on and trying to help them solve for that. And then the thriving, lastly, I'll talk about that. We're trying from a research perspective to help people capture their ideas around a thriving holistic workplace. What are some of the characteristics that we're going to frame? So we talk about togetherness, bringing people together in new ways, sanctuary. Some people, like many moms, dads, caregivers for pets, cats climbing across your laptop, that won't be happening in the workplace. This restoration, having the opportunity to restore and sanctuary back in your workplace. And then latitude. A lot of people are talking about wanting the flexibility when we do return back to the workplace of having that work from home. So they really want the flexibility and latitude to be able to choose as an employee where they're spending their time. So I think that's important. And the last thing I'll talk about from a thriving perspective is we're working a lot with our clients on the notion of a distributed workforce, which we just talked about. So this hybrid of together and home, right? So you'll have some level of remote, some level in place. So what do the rooms and spaces have to look like and feel like to support that environment? And a distributed workplace, meaning people are looking at a distributed geography and having perhaps, smaller satellite offices to meet their own employees where they might be, so that people don't have to commute to an office. So that's sort of the top of mind things that we've been talking with people about lately.
That's great. Well, thank you, everybody, for all the updates. There's a lot in what you just said, Kim, and certainly I know everyone who's running the company here from a culture standpoint, talking about the quiet. I come into the office and there's really more than 4 people, and it almost makes you a little sad that you just rather go home because you do miss the culture. And I'm curious, Ginny, I know y'all have done a lot of surveys at Capital One, and you're basing a strategy based on the surveys and employee desires about coming back and dealing with safety. But either through surveys or just, do you have a sense that your employees miss the culture, that if it was possible, they would rather be back in majority in the office and together?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Kim's point, people miss people. And, when we deployed our survey, it was with the understanding of, or it was with gaining an understanding of where the temperature was right now. How does everybody feel? Is everybody like ready to come back? Or are they saying no, not right now? And we heard that there is a small portion who would come back tomorrow if we opened up the doors. So we double clicked on that and we asked them, well, would you still feel the same if? you had to wear a mask, if you had to get your temperature checked, if you had to have a traceable, a wearable that Chris was talking about. And our assumptions were really validated that with every additive, we'll call it a hurdle, people were really saying, you know what, I'm pretty effective through Zoom and really don't feel a need to go back in. And we also, through our change management team, has been working really hard and created a video to really talk to associates about what it will look like, because it will not look like in the short term the office that we all want, remember, and need. So, we heard associates say that they want collaboration. They want to focus on their work, and they want a separation in work and life. And that's really hard right now. So knowing that that's not going to be the short term, then we validated that a small percentage is probably the right number right now. And let's focus on keeping everybody productive now at home. And we have time to kind of understand what will that long end state look like, so that we can continue to study.
So I'm curious from that, just Tamara, I mean, anyone can address this, but I think we as a firm, I think everyone probably is trying to understand how to not lose your company culture. It's hard to maintain when it's a 2D world. And so can you talk a little bit about maybe what our clients are doing, what we've been doing to maintain that connectedness that is not strictly work focused, but things that underpin a company culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think when this all started, there was this push for us to try to stay together. There were a lot of Zoom happy hours. There were a lot of scheduling of extracurricular activity, so we could all see each other. And I think I liked Kim's term. There was a moment of fatigue that hit, and everyone's calendars were being stretched very thin. So I think what we're seeing now is quantity over quality. And so maybe perhaps instead of having forced weekly social events, thin out the spacing of those so people can really get excited. It's a special event, but supplementing virtual calls with just picking up the phone, talking to a friend, checking on a colleague, having those kind of human interactions. One positive that we've noticed is because people aren't traveling anymore, back in pre-COVID, if you were having a large important meeting, maybe only a few people could go because of travel expenses. So there was always this download back at the office to junior staff or to other members of the team. Well, now that everyone really has access, collaboration and sharing is happening real time, where people are able to sit in on meetings, get that information quickly. So that's a positive. And we're seeing use of different types of platforms, Mural, Bluebeam, different digital and virtual ways to collaborate and share have been really successful in ways to have an energetic, fun, collaborative work session without being able to be in the room. I think to be candid, one challenge that's going to be unique to our office is how do we engage with our reps and our industry partners that we really miss and we value. I'm watching some of the questions come up right now on this, and it's a valid question. I would say, unfortunately, the ETS guidelines that just came out are probably going to encourage employers to continue to minimize outside deliveries, visitors, guests to the office. So I don't think we're going to see a return anytime soon of being able to allow our rep partners to come in. So we'll have to be creative and have maybe more intentionality about virtual presentations, because that does feel like that's been lost in the shuffle a bit. So we need to think about ways to reinvent that exchange of product, innovation, and data.
I completely agree. If I can just jump in really quickly, Spencer, and talk about NeoCon, which is an industry event that usually happens in Chicago early June. Last year, Knoll moved out to Fulton Market. So we branded our own opportunity and did Knoll Design Days. And so this year, because we couldn't all be together in Chicago and NeoCon turned into NeoConnect, we decided that we would do our Knoll Design Days virtually. So we had programming over 2 days and brought in some great industry experts and recorded all of the sessions. But we had over 11,700 viewers. So it was an amazing opportunity for us to Tamara's point, expand that. We would never have fit that many people in the showroom, right? So it was great for us to really expand the opportunity and allow people from globally everywhere that wouldn't afford to travel attend. So it was really cool. And also doing things that we hadn't done before, like a cool Knoll Design Days 2020 Spotify list with some really awesome music. So things that we wouldn't have done in the past, we've been innovating and rethinking, how to connect to a different audience, right? Or to a broader audience. So business is really being disrupted in that way. So yeah, we're all learning every day.
Yeah, Chris, it makes me think that there was a CM, you guys engage probably more than any of us, a more disparate group of people in the construction process, because it's the whole AE community, it's all the subcontractor community and suppliers. And I mean, some of that was probably always virtual to some extent, but how have you been managing different people have different platforms. They have different ability to implement technology. So I would think you'd have to be a little bit more flexible to keep all of those people engaged in the process.
Yeah, I think that's to say it lightly. It really, it is a challenge because our business is a people business for the most part. And, with all of our folks on construction projects, to our trade partners, to the clients, the architects and engineers we work with, we're typically working face to face. So going virtual has been a little different, especially for a culture like DPR that kind of prides ourselves on collaboration and kind of this, our wine bar mentality. It has been a challenge, but we've also realized it's hard. It's sometimes easier to get people together, because rather than now trying to coordinate 3 different people or 4 different people from 4 different companies meeting in one location and traveling, you just set up a video conference. As long as someone's got an hour slot on their calendar, they're available. So I think the meetings are probably as intense, and we're probably having more of them over the past 4 months. They're just not as personal, or they don't feel as personal, and it's tough, but I think we've all figured out ways to make connections video, and we're just continuing to evaluate. We've kind of standardized on Zoom and Teams as our 2 platforms, but if a customer wants to use Hi5, go to WebEx, whatever, we'll go. And same with software platforms and design platforms. We're kind of accustomed to accommodating those anyways. So.
Hey, Drew, you guys are a national firm, and you're very net zero sustainability based. Maybe talk a little bit about, I'm curious, I guess, about if this COVID is catching up to where you were or where you were already going, or it's not impacting your core business in that way.
Yeah, so it kind of, I would say it's probably kind of catching up to the way we had shifted, and we'd seen the industry shifting. We had put a lot of focus as a company, kind of company-wide, on really sinking our teeth into, this thought of wellness. We got a lot of people certified as well AP, kind of digging into that. Our brand new headquarters office in Louisville, Kentucky was the first platinum building or platinum office building in the state. So, not only do we believe in this stuff to teach or to put it in our designs, but we believe it in ourselves. We had the testing come in, they did like the smoke and smell testing inside of the building, kind of getting that overall occupant wellness for everybody in there, and kind of seeing how they interact. They're going back and asking everybody in these offices, how does this feel? Does this feel better or worse? Or how do you feel these impacts of design changes we've made due to these things have kind of impacted your day to day and the positives and negatives of that? So it's kind of pushing us towards where we thought we were going, where we wanted the designs to go. So yeah, it's been interesting to see that. And it's the conversation's coming up more and more in different places too, even some industries where you wouldn't have thought of it, where first costs generally mattered the most in small, quick commercial turnovers. We have clients coming to us asking us those same things. How can I position my spaces to let people know who, when they come to rent our spaces, they feel the same way, kind of implementing those small bits and pieces. If they can't do a full top-down prescriptive method for what you would do for like a well-certified building, can we take core components out of these things that fit into their buildings, their schedules, their budgets, and implement those so they can have some sort of feeling of comfort with the spaces they're providing?
Okay. So I'm going to throw this out there and realizing that, we are all talking about the things that we know, evidence-based and the surveys that we do. But I'm curious, and you can answer or you could decide not to answer, but what do people think might be, if you were to guess, a structural change that you see possibly coming out of this pandemic in terms of workplace and how we are going to engage each other? What might be a real structural shift? We may not know, but what do you think might be coming?
I actually, if I can answer that quickly, I'm sorry, Chris, I was already off of mute. So I really believe that from all the conversations that we're having with people, that they're going to rethink the purpose of office and having to draw people in, giving them a reason to come. And maybe it'll be, the bookend week that I often talk about with people, where people may choose, if they have the opportunity, to work remotely on Monday and Friday and work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when the majority of meetings were happening pre-COVID. So I feel like that's going to be important. And the way that companies are going to have to ascertain that or figure that out is through technology and, room sensor technology. Tamara brought up earlier, is really becoming top of mind for people. Like, once we are back in, because we've gone through this significant change, how are people using the space types that are there? And could there be a shift in those types of things? And then there's a whole contingent of people that really want to work at an office. Young professionals that are living in big cities with small apartments, makes it difficult for them to work from home, and uncomfortable. So they want a workplace. So they're drawn to a company by having a cool workplace to go to. So I think the rethinking from a big picture perspective, corporate real estate is going to be the near future.
Yeah, I would kind of parallel that. Cornet did a study where they said they found out that 58% of professionals in real estate really felt like the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 was in the past.
Agreed.
And so I think we're really going to see a turn for individuals discussing, why am I coming into the office, and kind of making a value judgment on what they need to get done, who they need to connect with, and we're really going to see that shape and shift, like Kim said, the types of spaces and how they get used in our workspaces. But I don't think we'll know that for a while until the dust settles, because I mean, if you're to ask me to look at my crystal ball, which I don't have one, I think initially you might see people wanting to come back when they feel safe and kind of this resurgence in. And then I think the dust will start to settle into absorbing, the great benefits that we've all discovered with more flexibility of schedule and time.
I think another change we're going to see is, even when people can come back, I think we've all learned that these virtual meetings can be effective. And so I think you'll continue to have your big milestone meetings in person, signature meetings, big presentations, but the perhaps the weekly owner architect contractor meetings or the more regular check-ins, those things, some of those will continue to live on virtually because they're very convenient. They don't require travel. So there's a, cost savings there. So I think with that, I suspect we're going to see more and more evolution of better quality, more affordable AV and technology platforms. Right now, Chris mentioned they're kind of the top 3 or 4 have the market. So what is that going to look like, in a year? And what will you be able to do on your phone? And what will you be able to capture? Because if we want people to come back, I think there's going to be some pressure to turn the dial up to make the office more stimulating, more innovative. So I think some of those technology changes, I'm excited to watch what comes out with that.
Yeah, me too. I think we're all going to be like a Google Earth car that has their own that sort of like, right? So we get the 3D. I'm serious. I think that's what's next. We're going to move from a 2D to a 3D in cameras. So.
No, I think to some degree we will be sitting in truly virtual meetings someday where we're sitting around a table and, it feels like you're in a room with other folks. I could see that coming. But I think one of the things that we're going to see a shift away from is, 4 people from 5 cities or, 5 people from 4 cities flying to Dallas for a 4-hour meeting. Just is not going to happen anymore.
Exactly.
It's going to happen virtually. And unless you have a 2 to 3 day run in a city where it makes sense to, be there for an extended period of time, I think the airline industry and the steakhouses are going to suffer greatly.
Exactly. Steakhouses.
I mean, you think about that, just that business travel alone, it's a huge structural change for travel and hospitality. So it's going to be really impactful. Well, with that, we're out of time. And thank you for addressing that question. I think it's always nice to hear industry leaders try to give a little bit of visioning of what's coming next beyond the data and the science that we maybe know today. So I appreciate that. Everyone who attended today, we're going to email out the webinar, so you'll get that email, and then we'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. I want to thank all the panelists. Everyone who's on the webinar, you feel free to reach out to any of these leaders, and if you want to engage with them on any of these topics, they're happy to do so. So their contact information is available, and you can reach out to them. We plan to do a part 3 of this, I think probably in September, and come back around and just, again, level set on where we are and where we think we're going. So I hope everyone will join us for that. In the meantime, enjoy your Zoom free Friday, I guess. Thanks, Kim, and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnson.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to SMBW. Be well.